What's up, everyone? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Odd Shopper channel, and today we're talking some college football ahead of the doubleheader on Thursday. It is week 9, of course. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. If you've done that, thank you. It helps us a lot. And we are brought to you by Bet365. They have a deal for those of you in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado, Louisiana, Indiana, Arizona, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. What you'll do is make your first deposit with the link below. Bet $5 in any game. This could be a side, a total, whatever you want. Whether it wins or loses, you are getting $200 in the form of bonus bets. You must be 21 or older to play, 18 in Kentucky. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, double header on deck, and I am happy to be leaving Conference USA behind us for a couple days at least. All the quarterbacks in Conference USA are terrible, and the ones that we get on the field constantly get hurt. I mean, that conference is just a mess. It's crazy that they have 8 of like the bottom 10 teams in the country. But anyway, we get a much better slate of games here. And it starts out in the Sun Belt where we have Georgia Southern taking on Old Dominion, who's been pretty surprising this year. Both these teams actually have been. Georgia Southern sitting at 5-2. Their 2 losses are to Boise State and Ole Miss. No shame there. They beat Nevada by 3, an FCS team after that. Georgia State, 38-21 was the score. They beat Marshall by 1 point. And probably their best win was their most recent one where they knocked off James Madison 28-14. And they did so in pretty convincing fashion. They held James Madison to 3.5 yards per play, so excellent data point in favor of Georgia Southern. Old Dominion's actually coming off, a similar game. They're 3-4. They've had a lot of injury woes, but most recently they beat Texas State 24-14. And they outgained them yards per play as well. Nothing super fluky in that game outside of Texas State missing 2 field goals, and they have turnover problems. That's basically a thing that's pretty constant for them. But Old Dominion also fumbled in that game and gave Texas State a field goal. So is what it is. Ultimately, this is a game that is fairly evenly matched. You can see that is evidenced by the spread on the screen. It is 2 points, 2.5 points in one spot, 2 spots, DraftKings and FanDuel actually hanging at 2.5. But it's in favor of the home team, which is Old Dominion. The total in the game currently sits at 54 points, a pretty healthy total, which makes sense. These teams are both fairly fast. But in the game, I do have a side I like, and it is Georgia Southern. I took a 2.5 earlier this week. Overall, Old Dominion's a team I'm trying to sell. They have a lot of problems, and they've been masked sort of by some fluky plays and weird games. They're on their backup quarterback. Grant Wilson's been out, and Colton Joseph is a liability through the air. Now, he's amazing on the ground, which needs to be said. 343 yards, 6.7 yards per carry, but their whole offense is him scrambling and trying to create on these broken plays. Their offensive line is awful. They're 126th in pass blocking, 122nd in run blocking. Joseph has a sub 55% completion percentage, under 5.5 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's actually run hot. He has 7 turnover-worthy plays. Only 2 of those have been converted. There's a bunch of injuries on this team. Like, the offensive line is battered and bruised. This team has defensive injuries, which I can't believe some of these teams haven't been able to overcome. Like, Texas State should be embarrassed. And, a couple teams have. Ethan Vasco is at 14.1 yards per attempt. But anyway, no Jason Henderson. He's their best player on defense. They've also been out depth linebacker Jamez Drummer. Patrick Smith-Young at safety has been out. This team is pretty banged up. On top of being not the greatest overall, they win through their defense, 54th overall, 23rd against the run, but they're 84th in coverage, 122nd in pass rush. If you can throw the ball, you can beat this team. And Georgia Southern, they have a 54% pass rate. This is a semi-air raid offense. The real problem with them is their quarterback, and I guess to bring it over there, Georgia Southern is a team I like quite a bit. Overall, this team is 86th on offense. Old Dominion is 131. Defense, Old Dominion is a little better, but it's not by much. Georgia Southern is 61st. To dive into this, Georgia Southern is a team I like in most places outside of their quarterback. They're actually decent on the offensive line, 25th in pass blocking, 77th in run blocking. Again, Old Dominion doesn't rush the passer, so you should be kept clean there. Receivers are completely fine. The run game has actually been somewhat decent for this team. J.C. French is the problem. And I can't believe this guy hasn't been benched yet, because we did see him injured for part of a game. Backup and former Indiana starter Dexter Williams came in and had an amazing game, but they went right back to J.C. French. And now I'm not at practice every day. Perhaps Williams just ran hot for a very short period of time on the field, and French outplays him every day in practice. This is not something I'll know. But what I do know is that French has 16 turnover-worthy plays, and only 5 of those have been converted into interceptions, which is a big reason why they're 5-2 and not 2-5. Outside of the turnover-worthy plays, he's been okay. He runs a little bit, 64.5% completion for 6.5 yards per attempt. I just worry that these turnover-worthy plays are going to catch up with French at some point. I fully think they should start Dexter Williams. Outside of that, I mean, they have every single advantage, and maybe they still have the advantage at quarterback. Like if Colton Joseph had started every game, his turnover-worthy plays would be right there with French. So I don't want to say that Old Dominion is significantly ahead of them in that regard. But on defense, they're 20th in coverage. They're 92nd in run defense. That's the big problem when you face Old Dominion. But luckily, like Old Dominion is awful. It's just their quarterback scrambling. So if you could potentially just dedicate extra resources to that, you should be completely fine. They're also the healthier team. So I'm not really all that worried about Georgia Southern on defense. It's a road trip that's never going to be easy. But I think they are the side here. And at a 2.5, that is completely reasonable to me. And there's actually one that's still at 210 on FanDuel right now. Everything else is either juice 2.5 or just too flat. So we'll back Georgia Southern over Old Dominion. Second game up. Another one I have plenty of interest in is Syracuse taking on Pittsburgh. This is a fun game and one I also played. I took a Syracuse plus the 6. There is one thing that makes me nervous, but overall I like this spot. Just trying to sell short on Pitt at some point this season, and certainly probably will do that next week. But to start with Syracuse, this team on offense runs an air raid. Kyle McCord has been awesome for this team. 65.5% completion. He's 19 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's running about average on turnover-worthy plays. You know, usually around 50% of those actually get converted. That's right where he is. O-line is good, not great. 59th in pass blocking, 61st in run blocking. LaQuint Allen is an excellent pass-catching back, so he fits this offense well. They do have a couple injuries. The big one is Trevor Pena at wide receiver. He is their wide receiver 1. Luckily, they've gotten pretty good play. Obviously, Gadsden's fine. Jackson Meeks has been pretty good at receiver as well for this team. So it's not like they're short on talent, but he is their wide receiver 1. So that's at least a concern. When you look at Pittsburgh's defense on the other side, I still think you should be able to exploit this if you are Syracuse. Pittsburgh is 72nd in coverage. It's where they're weakest on defense. And I don't think they face the best signal callers either. You just go back through what they've allowed this year. 7.4 yards to Fernando Mendoza. They faced a backup in Jacoby Criswell. Garrett Green has had a horrific season. Sorsby was at 7.8 yards per attempt. And then they faced Devin Cargman of Kent State. So it hasn't been a great slate of quarterbacks. The level of competition here is definitely weak for Pitt, and I think a little better for Syracuse. So I expect Syracuse to score. On the other side, Eli Holstein worries me a lot. 12 turnover-worthy plays, only 5 have been converted to interceptions. He's been fine. It's just these are going to get converted at a higher rate over time. He does run, which is solid for this team. And 8.5 yards per pass attempt is pretty good as well. The O-line is worse. They're 82nd in pass blocking, 108th in run blocking. A lot of the offense has been, all right, Holstein gets them into trouble. The O-line gets them into trouble. And then they have some sort of dump off to Des Reed on third down, and he bails them out because he's so good. That's not going away. Des Reed is awesome. So biggest concern probably is stopping him if you're Syracuse's defense. Fortunately, they are a little better against the run and running backs. They're 54th there. And they're getting back their best defender, Marlo Wax, who's been out since week 1, I believe, which is a huge addition to this team. He was their best defender last year, and he's actually good in all phases of the game. It's a lot of points for a team in Pitt I'm trying to sell on, and a team in Syracuse who's actually been surprising this year considering all the changes they made to their roster. So +6 is fine with me. I'm not sure I would like to go anywhere below that. If Pena plays, this is a smash. If he is out, I'm just comfortable with my number. I'm not going to buy out or anything. But there's a 6.5 hanging on the board right now, and it is available at BetMGM. So that is a fantastic number. I don't see this getting back to 7 or anything. So I think you just take this and you ride with it. But that'll do it for us today. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, leave them below in a comment, or the best way to reach me is on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Until next time, good luck. We will see you later.